I'm Max from Titan Robotics.
And I'm Aiden. Today we'll be teaching you how to make your own video game based on a popular game called Flappy Bird. We'll be doing this in a program called Scratch, which you need an account to use. To make an account, go to the link in the description and get a parent or guardian to help you out. Once you're there, create a new project and we'll get started.
So, to write the code for the Hippo, first we have to get a new sprite, and we can delete the default cat. Now, when we start the game, first thing we want to do is set his size to 50, because you see, it's a lot smaller, easier to work with. Next thing, we want to make sure he's visible just by showing him. And we want to make sure we have the right backdrop. So we'll just set it to the default one, and that shouldn't change anything. Now we want to go to a very specific position, which is about right here. And so negative 170x, which is the horizontal, and then 0y, which is the vertical. So 0, 0 is right here, so it puts him right here. So if we run that, yep, there he goes, right there. And now we need to make what's called the event loop. And it's just a loop that runs forever. It's pretty simple. And before we fill this in, we need to detect when we press a button. And we're going to use the spacebar, and this is going to make him jump. So when spacebar is pressed, we're going to make a new variable here and call it v-speed, or vertical speed. We can delete the other one. What we're going to do is we're going to set this to 12, which is just a good number we found. And then in the loop, what we can do is we can actually change the y, so that would be the vertical, or we want this block. We can change the y, so that's his vertical, by whatever value v-speed currently is. So if we run this right now, it won't do anything. But when we click spacebar, it'll just go up. We can click it a bunch. And nothing will change because it's just setting it to 12. But now it's at 12. That's an issue. So every time we start the game, it's going to immediately go up. So what we have to do here is in the very beginning, we have to set v-speed to 0, just so it resets the entire value. And now, yeah. But what we also want to happen is we want him to fall eventually. So we need to actually change v-speed by a negative number, so it goes down, so he will fall. So the number we're using is negative 1.5. And now he falls, but you can still make him bounce by clicking the spacebar. But nothing happens when he touches the wall, and v-speed keeps going up. So we need to get this little if block right here, and then detect if he's on the wall using this little block. So we set it to touching edge, and then once it touches the edge, we want to send out a message. And this message will be game over, because you're not supposed to touch the wall. And now we need to receive the message over here in this block. So when we receive game over, first we want to hide everything. So right now it's only this, so we just tell it to hide. And then we want to end everything, so we just stop. And now, there we go. And if we touch the wall, everything's over. And there's one more thing we can do. We can actually change the angle he's pointing at to make it a little more visually better, more appealing. So what we can do is we can tell it to point in a direction, and 90 would tell it to point straight to the right. Okay? And if we were to say 0, oh yeah, it even shows you right here. You can drag this around, so we can tell him to point backwards. And there he goes. But what we want to do is we want to use some math. So we grab this block, we want to take 90, and we want to subtract it by a number so that right when you click spacebar, he's pointed a bit upwards, but then as he falls, he starts pointing downwards. So an easy way to do this is just to subtract it by v-speed. So now you can see he does that. That's not really enough. We want to make him point more. So we can bring in a little more math here and take v-speed and multiply it by 2. So now we make it twice its value. And we try this again, and there he goes. Now he's pointing, and every time we click spacebar, he heads up again. Then we touch any of the walls, he disappears, and the game's over. But we can't touch the left and right wall because we're always going to be at y negative 170. And that's all for this hippo sprite.
Now that we have our hippo done, and we can see that it jumps, what we're going to do is start adding our pipes. So to do this, we're going to choose a new sprite, and this one is called paddle. So this gives us like the nice rectangular shape that we want for our pipes. Now what we're going to do is we're going to drag in when the green flag is clicked, so right at the start of the game, we're going to change the size of this guy as well. But for this one, we want it to be bigger so that the hippo can fit through it. Right now it's just too small to work with. So we'll drag in the set size block and set the size to 400%. So now when we click this flag, we see that the pipe is now 400% size. We're also going to point this in the direction 0. So that's going to make it straight up and down, as you can see here. So right now we have this pipe which is set to 400% size and it's straight up and down. Now what we need to do is drag in another forever loop. So forever, we're going to create 2 clones of this guy, and a clone is basically another version of this sprite that can act as its own separate entity. So in this case, we're going to be making 2 clones, one for the top pipe and one for the bottom pipe. And we can do that under control and then create clone of myself. So we're going to create 2 clones. Then up here, we don't want it to be constantly creating clones, so we're going to say wait and then 0.8 seconds. So it's going to create 2 clones of itself every 0.8 seconds. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to create a new variable called pipe y. And so this just stands for the vertical position of this pipe. So when this pipe is created, it's going to be over here and it's going to move across the screen. But when it starts, it's going to be assigned a random value for how high it is. And that's going to allow us to kind of have a little bit more of a randomness in the game. So we're going to initially set this pipe y. So every repetition of this forever loop, we're going to set the pipe y. And we're going to go over here to pick random. So for this pick random number, we can choose a lower limit and an upper limit. And something that we've found to be good is negative 325 to negative 158. So this will pick a random number in there, and then once we create these clones, those clones will go to that number. So we can click this, and it won't really do anything right now, but what you can't see is that it's creating clones. So if we drag this around while the game is going, you can see that there's a clone there. until the game ends and all of the clones are deleted. Alright, so next what we're going to do is under control, there's an option when I start as clone. So when the clones begin, we want them to go all the way to the right of the screen. So we're going to do go to, and then for X, it's going to be 251. That's all the way to the right. And then for Y, we're going to use this pipe Y that we created. So we're going to do go to X, 251, and Y is that pipe Y. Then, after this, what we're going to do is change pipe Y by 500. And so what this does is when the first clone gets created, it's going to go over here to pipe Y. And then when the second clone is created, it's going to go to pipe Y plus 500. And that's going to create the gap. So let's press the green flag and we'll see what happens. Okay, yeah, did you see that? Over here, it creates, it's doing some weird things because it's creating clones every 8 seconds, or 0.8 seconds. But it goes over to the right and creates 2 pipes, which are separated by a slight distance. Okay. But the thing is, we still have this free hanging pipe in the middle here, so what we're just going to do is hide this when it starts, and then just show these clones. So then you can only see these clones. Next what we're going to do is we're going to do a repeat until. So this is going to be a repeat until this pipe is all the way at this side. So it's going to be repeat until, and then we're going to have an operator, and it's going to be X is less than a certain number. And so this certain number is going to be negative 256. And that's once it's all the way to this side. So now we can go up here to motion and select X position. So repeat until this X position is less than 256. And then what we're going to do is change this X by negative 10. And this is the speed at which the pipes are moving. So we can press go, and then you can see these pipes will come across. However, they just stay on that other side. They're not deleting. And the Hippo, when it crashes into them, doesn't end the game. So what we can do is use that if touching again. So we can say if touching Hippo, then we can broadcast that game over just like we did when the Hippo touched the edge. So we can go over here to control and then do if and drag this out. And then sensing touching the Hippo, then we can broadcast game over. So if touching Hippo 1, then broadcast game over. And we can see that as soon as the Hippo touches the pipe, it's game over. So how do we actually make sure that we can get points? So we can go through these pipes, but they don't delete and they don't give us any points. So what we can do is make a new variable called points, and then we can start by setting the points to 0. So setting points to 0, and then every time this repeats, every time this this clone gets to the end, we're going to do change and then points by 0.5. And so we're doing change points by 0.5 because there are two pipes. So you can see once we pass those, the points start going up over here. Now we just need to delete the clones once they're finished. So there we go. Once you touch the pipes or touch the floor, then the game ends. So now you can see all of the points that that you've made, all the points that you've earned, as well as these 2 other variables. But if you don't want to see the other 2 variables, you can just hide them. And so something that you can add to this is making some sort of end screen. So right now we just have this plain old backdrop right here. But if you wanted to, you could add a new backdrop. You can just duplicate this one and then add some text like game over. And then once the game's over, you can go into this hippo sprite and just change this game over to say switch backdrop to backdrop 2. And so when the game ends, it'll just say game over and show you your points. There we go. That's the entire tutorial, but feel free to experiment with this game. We'll link our version of it in the description, but feel free to try other things, such as making other obstacles or changing the speed of the hippo or the speed of the pipes. Feel free to play around with it. Thanks for watching. As always, make sure to like and subscribe, and feel free to send us an email if you have any questions or concerns.